Hello, everyone. Welcome to Stealing from the Future after a long time. You see, today we are speaking about a subject of system breakdown in the world. We have seen that we are having a lot of a lot of spheres of life in which we are having the system breakdown, whether it's economical, whether it's political, whether it's on a humanity level. Now, to answer these questions, we have today with us our guest from the X-Plan Group, Diego Antolini. Hi, Diego. How are you?
Hey, Shlomo. I'm doing good. Thank you. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. So, Diego, you know everything about all the different spheres which are contributing to the system breakdown in the world today. So, I have a few questions for you. And the first questions, I'm ready. So, you ready for it? So I can start asking the questions.
Let's go.
Absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen, brilliant conversation to start off with. Diego. Okay, Diego, the first one. Let's start with the Ukraine-Russia war. Now, this war is between Russia and Ukraine, but also USA is a big contributor. So is NATO. So is the United Nations. This war is about to end complete. It's about to complete 100 days. And what has it done to the common man? They have affected the common man in a big way. What in the world? What are your views? How do you see the war as, and what's the real motive of the war?
Well, this question, it's very complicated, and obviously it would take a lot of time to explain all the different millions of different facets that every war brings along. We try to keep on two main reasons, which is the economic reason and the political reasons. The premise is that wars are all bad, and that the bottom line is that what really damages and suffering are the normal people, not just the people that are on the battlefield, in this case, the Ukrainian citizens and the population, but by proxy, a war like this, especially nowadays, that it's fought not only on the territory, but it's fought at a global scale, thanks to the digital technology world in which we live. It damages all other populations as well. Yeah. We will see later that some countries, even if so far away, just because of this conflict, are actually doing worse than Ukraine itself. So what can we say about this war? It's not a clean war. It's not a clear war. The motivations are not exactly what the mainstream media are telling us about. If we look at the Western media, we see Vladimir Putin as a dictator, as the devil incarnate, as the one who is making the Ukrainian people suffering. And if we are listening to these media, who have been proven over the last 2 years to extensively lie pretty much about everything, but if we listen to them, it looks like that Russia has to be condemned and basically ousted by the international community because of what it did. But is it really like that? Like, in a war, everybody is guilty. There is not just one party who has a fault, because if some relationship degenerates to an armed conflict, everybody lost. All the international relationship, all the diplomacy, all the bonds between and among countries failed. So that's one thing that I feel like saying. About the motivation, it's obviously a push that over the last decades, NATO and the US have exerted toward Russia, especially in the border. They tried their best to take territory or divide what was the former Soviet Union. And if you remember, between the 50s and the 80s, it was the communism nightmare. Like, every Western country was really frightened by that giant, because obviously was undermining the ultra-capitalist world that some elites were trying to put up. And the fall of the communism just opened the door for even a worse nightmare, which is the ultra-capitalism, the ultra-consumerism that we are living right now, and that it's bringing a lot of countries to the verge of bankruptcy. So if communism was bad, the system that has been replaced is not good either. There's something wrong as well. Crimea is one of the key areas that Russia doesn't want to lose if we want to go down to the reasons for the conflict. So on the side of the Russian, we have Crimea that needs to be kept under Russian hands. On the other hand, we have NATO, who's trying to control all the satellite former nations around Russia to control Russia. But what the media are not saying, and actually some spokesperson in the US government is saying, but the media are not reporting, is all the 15 or 20 biolabs funded by the US that are on Ukraine territory. And I remember one time Putin said in an interview, if I think he was speaking after Biden's blabbering, the usual ranting that he gave against Russia. And I think Putin said, Mr. Biden, what happened if you find out that there are biolabs on the Canadian border or the Mexican border? Would you feel threatened by that? And I think that was a very important statement, because we understand that biolabs are the reason for biowarfare, which is one of the worst, even worse than nuclear warfare. And if you have 20, 30 biolabs working on genetics and possibly weapons using microbes or germs right on the border, wouldn't you want to protect your land? I mean, I'm not saying that war is the way. I'm just saying that we should have all the information on both sides before we can make a judgment. And what's the propaganda that the media in the West are carrying out against Russia, I think it's shameful at best, and it's not honorable for what the real information should be. What happens is to the population that we are witnessing an increase in food prices, energy shortage, and that's the key for bringing countries down. If you cut out the fuel, or if you increase the price of the fuel that pretty much every supply chain, every industry depends on, then you put that country on its knees. And that's what's happening right now. The real reason, besides the lockdowns on the past 2 years, but we'll get there. But the real reason is that if we have a shortage in energy supply or fuel, then we have a shortage of pretty much everything, and we will have that phenomenon called inflation.
Absolutely. Which brings me to the next question. You have raised a very important word, Diego, inflation. We are experiencing a worldwide inflation. The main reason the media and the government around the world are giving is that, it's because of the Russia-Ukraine war that the energy and the fuel prices have gone up and the inflation had happened. Now, it's relatively affecting the supply chain and everything. The question is this a planned move by the governments of the world, to break the common man and, take the earning in the name of inflation?
Well, I think that the breaking of the war, it's a convenient excuse for the economists to blame the war for something that was bound to happen. Like every analyst with some little experience about the cycle of economy should tell you that this inflation that we're experiencing now comes a way backward, at least 5 or 6, if not 10 years back. The real reasons is not the war. The war may have highlighted it, sped it up, but even without this war, we would be in exactly the same situation. Actually, I don't want to elaborate too much on other topics, but without the war, probably we would be right now in a different condition that would have brought things even worse in the near future. Wars, what happens when a war breaks out, it sped up everything. Like, you can witness a leap forward of technology, economic like a system disrupture and reinstatement or new structure. Usually wars bring about innovations at a light speed for several reasons. So I'm not saying that we should welcome this war. I'm just saying that for many governments, this war has been a convenient excuse to blame it as the inflation is ramping up. But even without the war, we would have had the same inflation. Well, the one for once is the failure of the ultra-capitalist system, in my opinion. The ultra-consumerism and the way globalism brought a lot of countries that couldn't afford to the same level as the industrialized countries. And, you know, it's a circle. So sooner or later, what goes around comes around, and you can't hide certain strategies forever. It will come up, especially in the small countries. It's a fact that food and energy costs have increased, but not just because of the war. It's because for the last 2 years, all the countries in the world were locked down. It was impossible for every country or every business to produce, to import, export, to roll the industrial machine. You can't blame 100 days of war when we had 2 years of lockdowns. And everybody with the minimum of intelligence would understand that. And this didn't affect just the small businesses. It affects everything, everybody. So what happened with the war is just that maybe it made it worse in a shorter time, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because as it sped up the wars, it would also speed up the reinstatement or the new restructuring of the economy. Okay, so sometimes it's like when you do a shock therapy, or you have like a cancerous limb or part in your body. You don't try to treat it smoothly. You just cut out the limb to avoid the spread of the illness. It's the same thing. War, it's like a kind of an extreme possibility to stop something that otherwise would drag along for many, many, many years to a lot of damage. So for as much as I despise wars, and obviously I condemn every violence made upon people by any other human being, on the economic and political viewpoint, I think this war destroyed the plans of the so-called financial elites that wanted to drag the situation started in 2020 until 2023 or 2024, and they can't anymore because of this. So let's keep positive. And also I've read in different sources, some analysts are saying that this inflation won't last that long. And the reason is because of what I just said, because of the war. Without the war, he would have been dragged a long time with a lot more damages. So I agree that the war is one reason, is not the main reason, and it's definitely not something that the war caused. The war is just one of the many consequences of what happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago, with the US and NATO basically pushing Ukraine to enter the UN, to enter NATO, trying to keep all the former Soviet Union countries away from Russia and westernize them, exactly like they did in the Middle East. The same game is exactly the same game. And you can't do this when you have a country like Russia that is so big and has so many resources. I mean, you have to use a different type of communication, different diplomacy. So this is these are my reasons, Shomo, and I think it will be interesting to see once this war finally ends, how fast the economic system can revive.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear that, maybe after the war, the inflation won't last so long if it could have if the war hadn't taken place. So some nice words, is like music to the ears. But hey, let's see what happens. Speaking of which, it brings me to the next question. Uh, you see, many of us know, some countries, you might have said that, could not stand up to the standards of the high-end industrial capitalist countries. And one of them, which has slipped away and is on the verge of bankruptcy, is Sri Lanka. We all know that Sri Lanka, what has happened over there, and we all know that Sri Lanka is on the verge of bankruptcy. Now, before, earlier we used to know that people get bankrupt. We used to know that, companies get bankrupt. Now we are seeing countries getting bankrupt. Sri Lanka is the first example. And not only that, Sri Lanka is the tip of the iceberg. Now, people say that, 69 countries, more 69 countries which may go the way Sri Lanka has gone. I mean, if that happens, what is the future of our civilization? And where do we go from here, Diego?
Where history is a cycle. And after the globalization boomed, we witnessed a lot of, actually, no, between the 60s and the 70s, we witnessed a lot of countries declaring independence. Well, to a point, the globalization actually began with the declaration of independence of so many countries that detached from the huge empires of the Chinese influence, from the British influence, from the American imperialism, from France and UK and so forth. Became countries by themselves and started to, do the normal cycle of every country. And now what we're witnessing is that the smaller countries who relied too much on foreign funds, like Sri Lanka, but also many other little countries in Central America, in Africa. Even we have the example in Europe with Greece and Ireland. They went default, and Greece pretty much was bought out by China. Ireland survived, but still it's in a very bad shape. Italy as well and Spain are not doing very well, not on the verge of default, but they are there. And what I can say about this is, because of the rising of the multinational, thanks to the globalization, and these multinational, like the huge foundations, the holdings, that are trying to smother and to strangle the local food producers or the local producers, like India, when the Gates Foundation tried to enforce the agricultural law. Remember, in 2020 was a huge rioting of the Indian farmers because they didn't want the system to change. It would have killed them. It's the same thing in Africa is happening for this reason. The multinational are trying to kill the local production system, making it an international industrial chain that would only benefit and profit the huge financial investors, but not the local people and not the normal people, and not the country, especially small countries that survive thanks to the exporting. But these multinationals have really no interest in helping countries. Their interest is to make the countries under debt, and so to control them. So making the government on the verge of bankruptcy or default, so that they can control them and they can exploit the resources, the natural resources, the human resources, the technology resources of that country. So the one, again, is the lockdowns that very conveniently helped only the multinationals and the financial system who wanted some countries to literally disappear from the face of the earth, from the map. And that's why after 2 years of lockdown, now we're starting to see the effects. The effects on the economy is that no more exporting, the local people struggling or just simply vanishing from the economic arena. And what do you have left? I mean, the multinationals will not save the country. The multinationals are like parasites, are like locusts. They come, they invade a foreign country, they establish business there, they talk to the government, blackmail the government into convincing it to get funds from trust, venture capitalism, something that is not related to the real economy. And then once they succeed in destroying the real economy, what happens, what is left is a financial bubble that exists only in the virtual world. In the real world, there is nothing, nothing for nobody, especially from the people. And that's one of the reasons for example, Maldives, Sri Lanka, some African countries, as I said before, that they are on the verge of bankruptcy because they can't rely on the foreign funds. They can't rely on the financial system. In fact, is that system, that very system, that it's causing them to go bankrupt. So it's your question is, what's the future of our civilization? I can see only two scenarios right now. Either we go back to the biggest empires, like these small countries will be saved by the bigger countries, so they will be annexed to the territory, so they will lose independence again, but they will be saved. Or it comes in a different system other than the financial system that can save them. And I'm thinking about the digital currency, for example, the quantum financial system, something that you've been talking about sometimes in your channel. I've also discussed and researched. It's very new, it's there, but could be one of the, let's say, the safety backdoors governments may use. Otherwise, they have no other chance but to be bought by bigger countries. So independence, and see what happens next.
Oh, that's really, really grim for Sri Lanka. But yeah, I mean, talking about bankruptcy, let's move on to the next question then. Now, you see, we can talk about the basic requirement, that is food. Reports say that 250 million plus people are going to have food insecurity, and almost 1/3 of the world population is going to be affected by that problem. And do you see a mass killing by the worldwide government to cut down the population of the world and to keep things under control?
This narrative about the food shortage and the necessity to reduce world population has been going on for a while. We have been led to believe that there are not enough resources for all the people that we are in the world. But real evidence about this has never been brought forth. In fact, we know that if we leave a country with its own agricultural system and local system, there is food for everybody. The only places and the examples where countries ran out of food or had shortage of food is when a foreign country invaded them, capsized completely their local system. For example, I'm thinking about the African countries, I'm thinking about Afghanistan or Iraq, I'm thinking about the coup d'etat in South America. Once you have these foreign invasions, and then you experience poverty. But otherwise, even countries without technology, even countries that they're not up to the most industrialized countries, they always produce their own food and they can have it for everybody. So my question is it really that it's the shortage of food the reason why we are saying we're too many and we need to reduce population, or it's rather just the fear that some entities, some let's say elites or establishment, governments or agencies or multinationals are spreading just to keep people under fear and thereby under control? What you said something very right. See, keep things under control. When the population is too much, it becomes hard to control unless this population is weak. And the worst weakness a population can have is a fear for survival or for life or for health, as we witnessed in the last 2 years. There was a very blatant evidence. So I tend to believe that there is no shortage of food whatsoever. There is plenty of land available, especially with technology. So even the world population should not be a problem. I'd rather employ government resources instead of controlling people into opening new territories make those territories livable and exploit the resources to help people. But obviously this is utopia, because if the governments do that, they will lose all the control that they have, and therefore their power, of which they seem so obsessed about. And Shomo, is all comes down to this: if the government don't start doing things for the people, to the advantage of the people, people will always suffer. People will always experience shortage. But it's not because there is shortage of food. It's because the governments are not really doing anything for the people. And that's a political statement that I make. And that's, for me, the main reason for what we've been told, which is a lie, that we are running out of food.
That's I feel that's correct. I mean, if the government doesn't take care of people, there will always be shortages. Yeah, I agree to that. On the contrary, when we talk on, now let's go to the next question. When we talk on war, there are many fronts. We can talk of, the talk of, the China-Taiwan front, the India-Pakistan-China front, the Israel and Iran front. Now, when we put all these fronts together, like, what would be the impact of this on the common man around the world? And there will be nuclear weapons that will be used when we talk about war?
I'll be very quick on this, because a lot of stuff I already covered in the questions you asked me before. But there are many types of wars. There are many different wars that are being fought right now. Some are on the ground, like the Ukraine, Russia right now. Others are more subtle. They are fought online. They're fought on a diplomatic. So these many wars all bring different effects upon people. And for the common man, is that it brings imbalance. It brings uncertainty. And a lot of people, they don't need that. There are very few people that, even in times of uncertainty, they can find the strength to move forward and to create their own reality. A lot of people, they rely on leaders, on inspired people they believe in. So we need these leaders to be strong and tell us the truth. What is the truth of this conflict? The nuclear weapon, I don't think that would be used, because it would contradict with the reasons why all this is happening, to exploit people and resources. And I don't think it would be, not because the governments care about the people, of course, but because the government care about the territory and the resources. And the nuclear weapons would disrupt everything, would destroy everything. So I don't think they would use nuclear weapons, but they would use the fear about nuclear weapons, for sure, as a leverage to make some moves, like the Russian establishment did, like the US did. That sometimes they always bring that about, we're going to use the nuclear weapons, and this would make people a lot afraid, because everybody remembers about Hiroshima, everybody remembers about Chernobyl, and so forth. But I don't think this can be they'd rather use bio weapons, like they'd rather use bacteria, to attack population, and it's far worse, but they will not use nuclear weapons.
Yeah, that's something which we have seen for quite a few years now. In fact, the last 2 years we have seen a bio war. So yeah, that's absolutely what I feel you said is absolutely correct. Now we are, if we go on to the next topic, we are even at war with Mother Earth, the climate change. It's also a very big problem for the world. If you see, there are floods, there are wildfires, there are many other problematic things like storms, cyclones. Now, even though weather patterns have become unstable around the world, what is your thoughts on that, Gabe?
Climate change has been one of the Trojan horse for many years for the establishment before 2020, to put people under the fear that the Earth is dying and that we're going to experience a huge increase in the heat waves and everything. In 2019, this lie was exposed by several scientists that said that it's all, BS, pardon my French. It's all a lie, that the climate change, I also wrote about this in several articles, climate change is another excuse for people to manipulate the masses, for the governments and the financial people. The Earth, like everything in the universe, has its own macro cycle, and the astronomical cycle involves the stars, involves the galaxy, involves the movements of planets. So every celestial body goes through cycles of heat and freezing and static level. So what's happening to the Earth? It's happening not because of the CO2 of just 6 billion of people in a planet that could easily hold 3 times more and be still unaffected by all the greenhouse gases that we produce. For several reasons that I will not explain here, but if you go online, you can see my articles where I explain why. There is a change, right? Of course. Every planet goes through change, and probably we are experiencing right now a change. You know, after the last flood or the last ice age, obviously we are going through some planetary change. But this doesn't mean that we have to be so catastrophic about what's happening, because the Earth, it's alive. Like you said, it's Mother Earth. It's alive, and a planet which is alive, if you respect it, it will never do anything against its guests. We are guests in this planet. So it's not going to destroy its guests. It's going to maybe change, and we're going to change with it, adapt, yes. But there's no such a thing as a destruction. And I was surprised that recently I read an article on Nature saying that the scientists suggest that planet Earth might be alive. I was really laughing about that, because we need scientists right now in 2021 to suggest that our planet might be alive. When I mean, even the newborn baby, when it comes to life, understands that. You don't need a scientist to publishing an article on Nature to understand that. I mean, and this is one of more reasons to see if the planet is alive and has a conscience, it would never, ever do anything against the equilibrium, the balance of its own system. We are trying to destroy it, but there is no way we can. So it's, again, another excuse for the time being to keep people under fear and uncertainty and be easily manipulated by the solution that the government will suggest in order to save the planet, which is ridiculous. No, in order to control us even more.
Right. It's more of about controlling us rather than saving the planet. That's the basic agenda. So you see, there's another thing that intrigues me. Moving on, technology. Technology has played a big role in our world. What role will it play in the future? And do you see a change in the world order that many are talking about with artificial intelligence, technology, in many other ways, in altering our lives? So what does that change mean for the population?
If we bring about the artificial intelligence without a proper education of what it is, it can be catastrophic. That, yes, it can be a disaster for people and society, communities, individuals. Artificial intelligence without understanding it would even more control us and make us feel sheep in a fence, like in an Orwellian world that many people are saying we're living right now. So we need to be very careful about the technology, how it's being brought into the society, and I hope it would benefit the population, but let me have my doubts seeing what's happening with the introduction of artificial intelligence right now. We will talk about this later on for sure.
Definitely. One thing really intrigues me, keeping on this chapter, I know we can talk about this later on. There was this movie which I was watching today only, it's just a bit off this thing, but I want to put this in front of you. I think our human minds really think a lot, This movie called Extinction, there's a movie called Extinction. Over there, we have shown that we have ourselves, humans, have ourselves grown, made humans through whatever, I don't know, whether genetical engineering or something. put chips in those robots, and through artificial intelligence we have replicated people, and those people have become so powerful that they want to destroy humans and control the world. This is something which I feel maybe a bit far-fetched, or may not be.
No, there is more truth in movies than in the breaking news. So if you want to see what really these big, powerful people, international, multinational are planning, you guys watch movies, don't watch the news. Then you can know a lot more.
Absolutely. That's why movies nowadays are terrific to watch. Deals with the real aspects, very subtly conveyed. So that brings us to the last question of today's episode. With all the problems we have discussed, where do you see humanity in 2030?
I will close with just a very simple phrase. Either we will be completely enslaved and made like the machines that they're trying to bring into society, so we will become human machines and the machines will become more human, or we will be completely free. I don't see any gray area, any in between, one extreme or the other, and the choice is upon us.
So after all this, Diego, we had a fabulous question answer session, right from the Russia-Ukraine war to the inflation, to the topic of bankruptcy, to climate change and technology. What all this taken together, what do you think the future holds for us? Like you said, in 2030, either we are there or we have this technological robots or machines taking over us. But that was a narrowed down question, a narrowed down answer to that. But I'm saying overall, all these things from whatever we spoke of, what do you think holds for us for the future?
Okay, I'll try to summarize what is my thinking today, because as you know, life progresses, everything always moves. So what I think today might not be what I think later. But as of now, for all that been witnessed in the last few years, what can I say is, as long as the world population will be kept under ignorance about governmental projects, about new innovations, about the upward of technology to the world and to the various aspects of society, until the information given to the world population is just information to manipulate, not information to open the mind or to increase the consciousness, the awareness of who we are, then the world population will always be sheep, always be animals kept in a fence by a few shepherds that have no love or care whatsoever for them. They're just being there to be consumed, to be exploited, and to be replaced when they're no longer needed. So if we continue down this trend, which is very dangerous and has been going on for too long, then I don't see any bright future for humanity. If, however, we learn by ourselves how to awaken, how to raise our consciousness to levels that are beyond fear, beyond uncertainty, we need to believe in who we are and our true potential as human beings, which is pretty much an absolute potential. We can do anything we want. We can project reality. We can create reality. We can turn others' reality to our own benefits in a very positive way. Once we understand this, we accept this, then humans can really change the course of their life path. They can become something else. They can really take over all this minority of selfless, evil people that are here just to control us and to keep us under the enslavement of deception and fear. That's why earlier I said we only have two ways. One is to remain slaves. One is to become the leaders and the shepherds of ourselves. Is it easy? Well, in my opinion, it's more difficult to stay the way we are, because if anybody who is awakened understand how our freedom is pushing us to rise, to soar, not to wreath or to crawl on the ground. So it only takes faith. It only takes some sacrifice, faith in yourself, of course, and some sacrifice and some efforts, because nothing comes easy in life. And that's it. So if we go down that path, then I see a very bright future for humanity. And I hope we're going to choose this path. I mean, I have, like many have, but we need the collective, as a human beings, as a human race, we need the collective choice to go down that path.
There you go, folks. Diego had the answers for you. I had the question: where do you see yourselves after understanding what the world system breakdown, the spheres of the system breakdown, how it is affecting us, what we are going through, all this inflation, this climate change, these wars, this bio wars, everything, whatever is happening to us, everything, technology taking over us or we taking over technology, whatever, it is our choices that will help define our future. What do you think about it, folks? Do you think you will be able to raise your voice and try to define the future? Try to make the future brighter by raising your voice, or be the slaves as we have always tried, not tried, obviously been. So yeah, so we should try to be the reverse. That's for you folks. Think about it.